Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Nvidia daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Nvidia stock. Let's talk about what is happening with Nvidia stock, what we can expect moving into next week, and all of that good stuff. So as per usual, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live. That link is below. For just $3 a month, you get access to all my intraday thoughts, posts, updates, etc. on Tesla and sometimes the broader market as a whole. Or for $5, you get access to all of that, plus daily NVIDIA updates as well. But all that being said and done, let's jump into it. NVIDIA closing the day only-ish, 1.6% down on the day, closing at pretty much 116 on the dot, which is a little bit of an underperformance compared to the market. QQQ only down 0.2%. But before I jump into NVIDIA, I actually forgot to mention this in my Tesla video completely. I just remembered. So hopefully some people from that video are watching this. There's something I want to quickly mention about SPY. QQQ actually did a lot better today than SPY, in my opinion, and I'll explain why. QQQ ended up gap filling. Sure, it closed below the gap, but nonetheless, it ended up gap filling. That's really, really good. SPY, unfortunately, was not able to gap fill. The gap fill is all the way up at 571. Couldn't even get there. That's bearish. Why is that bearish? Well, because SPY had a gap down. Can't even go back up to fill the gap. It tried, couldn't even do that, which means the bears are really taking control of SPY, and that's usually a bad sign. For instance, the opposite is true as well. If you have a gap up and you just continue gapping up without really showing too many signs of wanting to fill the gap below, that's bullish and you continue upwards, and that's exactly what Google did. That's just an example, for instance, right? These are like true massive bullish moves, right? Constant gap ups like this. Bullish, very good to see. Flip side is true too. You get a gap down and you can't even fill the gap and you're having issues to even fill it. That's bearish in this case. So I want to make that very clear for SPY. QQQ actually, it did fill the gap. Now it's still closed below, so it's not like amazing, but it filled the gap, which is less bearish, in my opinion at least, than SPY. We'll see how it continues, of course. QQQ actually for once held up better than SPY, which is pretty rare, but it did, which is to be shown with what I just mentioned. Also, on top of that, QQQ is potentially showing a potential island reversal pattern. This is also a very bearish pattern if we cannot fill this gap. So essentially, SPY. SPY needs to fill the gap. That's the TLDR. SPY needs to fill the gap. If it doesn't, that could be bad for the market. Could be bad for NVIDIA potentially as well. Thought I'd mention that really quickly. And Tesla as well. If you're here from the Tesla video, I forgot to mention that in my Tesla video. But jumping into NVIDIA specifically, right? NVIDIA is still looking pretty decent, right? It's not looking too bad. We held the 21 EMA today, which is important. We ended up also on the 4-hour chart pretty much holding almost right on that bull flag. It's pretty close, I'm not going to lie. It's not very convincing of a hold of the bull flag, but technically it's holding ever so slightly. So there is that. So it's not all bad news, right? You can see on the 1 hour as well, like barely holding on. So again, not the most convincing retest so far, but it is technically holding. And we did close the daily candle above the 21 EMA, which is all good news. So the way I look at it is pretty simple, right? If NVIDIA continues holding above the 21 EMA and pretty much, what is it, about 115.67-ish, it's bullish, and I think the next move is going to be most likely another retest of 120, break above 120, 123, break above that, 125-ish. Pretty simple. Below the 21 EMA, if we close candles, I personally believe NVIDIA will come down to this 113 level once again. Below that, will most likely come down to 110, and below that, probably 108 to as low as 105 to set a higher low. Those are the main levels to the upside or to the downside. It's really just that simple, right? 21 EMA is pretty much the line in the sand. Below bearish, above bullish. Pretty simple stuff. Now, there are a little bit of signs of concern. I wouldn't say NVIDIA is completely out of the, free from, any sign of bearishness. And that's because, well, the stochastic is curling, right? It is curling. It is still bullish. It's not cross bearish, right? But this is something that, you still want to be paying attention to. This thing crosses bearish on the daily chart. That's going to be pretty bearish. I personally would not like to see that. So take that for what it's worth, right? If this thing crosses bearish, that's not good. RSI is still at least not looking overbought or anything like that. It's kind of in the middle. So there is still more room to the upside for NVIDIA, which is why I like it compared to some other stocks where, there feels like there's a little bit less room to the upside, right? Just keep that in mind, right? Which is why I kind of like the way NVIDIA is doing it. It looks like it's just doing a sideways correction here. So essentially, again, another way of looking at it is the recent low and the recent high of, so the recent low of this, 113.3 roughly versus this kind of almost 120. Pretty important pivot levels, right? Above or below, you most likely continue in that respective direction as well. So just, look for those levels as well. 120, 113, pretty important. Below 113, like I said, 110 to as low as 105. Above 120, at least 123, if not to about 125. I want to take a look at the weekly candle though. This is where things are a little bit more interesting to me, right? The weekly candle is pretty interesting because it's a pretty rare occurrence that NVIDIA actually sets an inside week candle, right? Inside week candle obviously just means the fact that this week pretty much traded within the week, within the previous candles, in this case, a week. It is a weekly time frame, right, that we're looking at. So it's completely contained within it, right? Usually when you get these inside week or inside day candles or whatever, it's actually kind of nice because they're pretty simple to trade. I mean, they're not guaranteed, they're not perfect, right? But usually the way you look at them is, well, if you break above or below that week's high or low, I might have to sneeze soon. If you break above that week's high or low, then expect continuation in that respective direction. I feel like I'm about to sneeze, but it feels like it's like right there, but it's not coming. I don't know why. Anyway, which happens to be the levels I just mentioned, right? Pretty much 120 and pretty much 113 point, like, 3 or whatever it is, right? I don't like looking at it like very specifically. It's like, oh, if it goes below 113.32345, it's like, it's bear. No, it's like around the low 113s, right? If we break or below or above those levels, again, expect continuation in that respective direction. And that's kind of how you play inside week, inside day candles, right? Pretty simple stuff for the most part. So just wait for that, in my opinion. If you're someone that's, risk adverse and you don't want to take any chances, you can also just wait. No financial advice, just my opinion, thinking out loud. You can just wait for a break below or above these candles and, play the short side or the bullish side or the long side, right? It really just depends on what you want to do and how you want to play it, or wait for it to move back down lower into, start accumulating. Whatever the case, whatever your strategy is, right? You can do that. I personally have shares. I did buy shares today. I did sell cover calls against them instantly for next week as a hedge. So worst case scenario, I potentially miss out on some profit, but I will go ahead and buy more shares if I see a break above 120. And of course, if we break below 113, well, at least my shares are covered called. Covered called, is that a thing? At least I have covered calls as a hedge on my shares, so it's not too bad. And I have sold puts down below as well to buy lower, which I will of course buy, and I'll buy more if we go even lower with more cash secure puts. I am pretty heavy on cash right now, but I do have a little bit of long side exposure just in case, right? Mainly because the market, again, especially with SPY and whatnot, it's looking not amazing, right? Seasonality dictates this, right? Seasonality dictates, a lot of people were bearish on September, and September usually is bearish. September usually is a bearish month. But the thing with September in an election season is the fact that September is actually not as bad as people think it is. Now, the ending of September could be a little bit concerning, but the real concern usually in an election year, obviously October, because that's usually when the election stuff really ramps up. And that's where, you get a lot of let's just say drama, to say the least, right? In America, especially with an election like this. So October is usually where the pain really comes in. Not September. September is usually okay to kind of bad, maybe. October is usually where it's really bad. So that's where I'm a little bit more concerned about October, right? So we'll see how September plays out. Again, as long as NVIDIA holds the 21 EMA, I'm more bullish and bearish. Below it, I'm more bearish and bullish. Pretty simple. And that's kind of the main way I'll be looking at NVIDIA moving forward. In terms of options flow, let's take a look at options flow for NVIDIA here on Cheddar Flow and, of course, Black Box. In terms of Black Box, you can see NVIDIA is the second most bearish flow. Only 8 million, though. Nothing too crazy to write home about. And in terms of options flow over here, you can see 5 million bearish put flow, but about 11 million bullish call flow on NVIDIA. Also, I have these, if you want to use Cheddar Flow or Black Box for yourself, phenomenal option services. I personally like Cheddar Flow a little bit more than Black Box, but Black Box is phenomenal as well. Either way, I have a link to them below in the description with the discount code. Check it out if you would like to see it yourself or use it yourself. But that's kind of the main way I'm looking at NVIDIA. Now, the last thing I want to take a look at before we end off this video are going to be the bands. This is something I've stopped using for a while. I don't know why I did. I literally have no idea why I did. They're so good. I'm going to be using them again. I just kind of almost forgot to start using them. I don't know what happened. I was playing around with too many different indicators that were kind of messing with my mind a little bit. Like the BX Trender, Peter DiCarlo uses it. Phenomenal trader, absolute goat. Love that man. I don't like the BX Trender as much as he does. Personally, I really like these bands though. Why? Because let's take a look at it on the 4-hour chart. NVIDIA. Anytime NVIDIA has gotten into these really oversold territories, that's been a buy the dip easily. Every time it's gotten into these very overbought territories closer to the red band at the top, it's been pretty much, sell cover calls or really just exit the shares. And it's been pretty damn good at that, right? Right now, we're pretty much right in the middle. We're not overbought and we're not oversold on NVIDIA, which is why I kind of like it, as opposed to something like Tesla that is overbought, right? It just barely exited actually overbought today on the 4-hour chart. But the daily, you can see the daily is well into overbought territory, right? Same with NVIDIA now, we can see right in the center, but on the daily as well, if it ever enters these oversold territories, it's usually been, you buy the dip situation until it pretty much goes to the exact opposite section of the bands, right? And it's just been, man, this thing just works so well on the Mag 7. It's not as good as on more violent stocks. Like if you, I don't know, maybe take a look at, maybe like Snow, I guess. or something like that. Like you can see it's okay. Not as good though, in my opinion, right? Or like something like really violent, like CLSK or something like that. It was pretty good up here, but essentially if the stock is like a small cap that's very violent, in my opinion, it's not as good. But on the Mag 7, it's pretty damn good, man. Whenever any Mag 7 gets into oversold territories like this, into like really deep territory, like for instance, Google, they'll have, bam, bought that, bam, instant profit. Cool, exited. And then one right in the middle, bam, crashed again. Very oversold. On the daily, right at the bottom of the red, buy that, bam, you're good. And you're already in the opposite side, right? It's so good at it that the fact that I stopped using it, man, I don't know what I was thinking. I really don't. But regardless, that's another story for another day. The point I'm trying to make for Nvidia is, well, in my opinion, I slightly lean bullish on Nvidia, but there are still some signs of concern, such as the stochastic getting ready to curl, potentially getting ready to potentially cross back to being bearish. That's my only really sign of concern. Or I guess the market would SPY, like I said, looking kind of toppy here. Not really liking this candle formation on SPY as well. But otherwise, just looking strictly at Nvidia, I do like the fact that it's still above the 21 EMA, and I personally believe that there's still a higher chance it moves up from here as opposed to down. But I wouldn't say it's substantially higher, maybe like 60-40, 70-30. To the bullish side, right? I definitely don't think it's completely, guaranteed or anything like that, mainly because the market looks a little bit concerning and we are getting close to October. But again, the levels to look for, that inside week candle to look for, those ranges to look for, and what happens if you break above or below 120 or pretty much 113. So in my opinion, let those levels play for themselves and just, go off of that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great weekend. Peace.